Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate the ranking member allowing me to jump ahead here. The New York Times recently published hundreds of pages of leaked party documents relating to repression of the Uyghurs. Some seem to suggest that the rampant human rights abuses in Xinjiang had caused rifts in party leadership. Mr. Jadat, how significant are these dissenting voices, and how can the United States leverage internal disagreement to blunt Beijing's attack on the Uyghur Muslims?
So for that question, I think before we come to the question part, it's really important to know that the documents were released by someone inside the party.
Right.
And then he or she stated that the reason that he risked his or her life to publish the documents is to get Xi Jinping and then the party officials in front of the justice. So we have to get the signal. And then the world was waiting for a document or proof or evidence for years, but now we got the hard proof. It is coming directly from the Xi Jinping himself. And then there is disagreements between the Communist Party about what to do, how to suppress the Uyghurs. But it is really good to see that there is at least some people in the Chinese government, the ethnic Chinese officials, that they are trying or saying no to the Xi Jinping's order.
Well, I hope we can continue to leverage a little bit of that internal dissent, and it is up to us to give voice. I thank you for your courage and all that you have endured. More than a year ago, in a controversial bid to insulate Chinese Catholics from persecution and intimidation, the Vatican signed a deal with the Chinese government allowing it a role in appointing Catholic bishops in China. In the meantime, China has launched a Sinicization campaign to dilute the religious, ethnic, and cultural identities of minority groups. Dr. Richardson, how is Sinicization affecting Chinese Catholic communities, both state-sanctioned and underground, and how has the Vatican responded?
Sinicization means being loyal to the party and the government above anything.
It's an amazing word, isn't it? Yes.
And it's a little hard to reconcile with the concept of the freedom to believe.
Correct.
Since one rather does seem to replace the other. So the problems that we're seeing as a result of the Sinicization campaign aren't unique to people who are worshiping in state-sanctioned Catholic churches versus underground ones. This is relevant to Tibetan Buddhists. It's relevant across different faith communities. It is hard to see much of a consequential response whatsoever from the Vatican. There was a Global Times story this morning that I believe suggested that the Pope had China and the Chinese people central to his heart. It's up to the Vatican to say whether that's accurate, but negotiations seem to be proceeding between the two about the selection of bishops.
Well, as a cradle Catholic, I believe that it is incumbent upon the Vatican to call this Sinicization campaign out, especially given the agreement that they have undertaken with the Catholic bishops in China, and I would very vociferously call on that here. China is in the process of assembling and implementing a dystopian social credit system that uses data mining and surveillance to score citizens based on their, quote, trustworthiness. I understand China plans to deploy a similar system now to track businesses operating in China. Dr. Richardson, again, what is the status of the corporate social credit system, and how do you anticipate it will be used to coerce and intimidate foreign actors?
The most recent development was about 3 months ago when Chinese authorities announced that they were going to use the social credit system, or that they were going to apply the corporate version of it, not just to domestic companies, but to foreign ones as well. I can only assume that our collective social credit scores are pretty low at the moment. It is very difficult to tell just how integrated across the country these systems are. And at the moment, from our perspective, they appear designed to reward or induce particular kinds of behavior. It's not exactly clear what sorts of punishments will follow for having a low score. We know that if you've got a good score, for example, you're more likely to be able to enroll your child in the school that you want, or you won't have problems doing things like buying plane tickets or accessing state services. But if you have a low score, you can run into problems. And of course, in a normal world, this might just be sort of a consumer rating system, maybe. But we're talking about an environment in which, the law is whatever the Chinese Communist Party says it is when it says it is that. And there's no right to privacy. And there's no way for people to know fully how they're being rated, what the consequences are. It's an entirely arbitrary system. And in a way, I think to the extent some people inside China have expressed enthusiasm for this idea, that's as much a commentary on how politicized and corrupt the legal system is in not being able to deliver consistent verdicts about what behavior that's been codified by law
The repression and the brainwashing is significant. My time has expired. I want to thank you all for being here, for your courage, and everyone who sits behind you. Know that this Congress and this committee care deeply about bringing light to this process and this disgraceful humanitarian regime. So I yield back, Mr.